The on-call had some particular requirements. Those requirements were that, first of all, you have to effect the evacuation within 40 minutes. And it's debatable as to what the time is, but that was the criteria back then. We had 2 school districts. The difficulty with the school districts was the fact that we didn't have the campuses. We didn't have any sufficient vehicles to be able to evacuate the children by vehicle. And so the question was it feasible to evacuate the campuses to a safe elevation, which was deemed 120 feet above the valley floor, within the available time? And we needed to effect that evacuation by foot because we didn't have vehicles to do it. And we needed to also determine whether it was possible to allow the students and the faculty to evacuate away from vehicles, because in a evacuation, we saw there was a false alarm, and the vehicles hit the road and everybody was going like crazy. You don't want to mix pedestrians with vehicles. So that was my charge back in 2003. Fortunately, as mentioned earlier, we do have a warning system, and I think that the gentleman at the end of the table there is raising the flag in Mount Suribachi, and he's going to give us a warning. And this is the good news. It's an advancement in our ability to determine whether there is a threat pending to the city of Orting. The bad news would be that, for instance, if you had a building and you had a fire alarm in the building, but you did not provide for adequate egress from the building. Unfortunately, Orting found itself in a position where they don't have enough egress within the available time. So that's combined with the fact, as you saw in earlier slides, that Orting is the confluence of the Puyallup and the Carbon River drainage. And because of the limited amount of time to be able to evacuate, Orting is in a unique position vis-a-vis the valley. Puyallup and Sumner are further down the valley. They have a lot more options for evacuating their citizens, and they have a lot more time. Orting does not. So this is the problem that faced me in 2003. What do you do? The Bridge for Kids Committee had identified 2 potential crossings of the Carbon River that they wanted us to look at as part of our study. So in my usual way, I came down, looked at the valley. The valley is completely flat. We do have 2 locations that would allow you to evacuate to higher ground. You have the South Hill section over here, and you have the Orting Plateau over here. And the Orting Plateau is the one that we wanted to focus on because it was closer to the school campuses. So I came down, acquainted myself with the Orting community. One of the parameters that we had to deal with was the fact that you have younger children, and younger children move in an evacuation slower than older children, much the same way as older adults move much slower than younger adults. So we had to fine-tune our modeling to take into account the fact that we had a slower population moving along the roadways. We did have good news in that Orting has, on a yearly basis, practiced their evacuations, and that's really good for the community because it tells the community what is possible. The downside is that it is impossible to effectively practice an evacuation in a realistic mode, which would mix the vehicles with the students for obvious reasons. It would be dangerous. So up to this point, we have whatever is available at the community. As you can see from this board and from the boards you saw as you came in, that there is a significant population that's on the road that even in these civilized conditions without vehicles here, they tend to spill off into the road. Those few people that cannot physically walk can be put into the available vehicles at the Orting schools and taken out. And that was the strategy and continues to be the strategy up to this point. Now, what we do as part of our evaluation is to do a type size analysis and locations. So first of all, I want to look at the locations that are available for us to actually evacuate the two school districts. We have the one high school and elementary school, and we have Ptarmigan over on this side right here. And we have this bluff that is quite significant, 300-400 feet high in the vicinity. So you don't necessarily have many opportunities for coming across. In our reconnoitering of the upper area there, we ran into lots of flora and fauna and physical hazards, not to mention landslide potential in the uphill sections. So that colored our analysis of what was actually possible and buildable up on the Ording Plateau. The treatment plant crossing on the surface, if you look at this particular map, it doesn't really show anything significant. But when you go out to the site, there's actually a swale that's located in the swale right opposite the treatment plant. And it is relatively stable. There are some seeps that are coming on the side, but this one was fairly stable, and we felt it was a good opportunity to suggest this as an alternate. Downside of this is that we would have to definitely stabilize the stair portion of the crossing. And as part of our analysis, we had not looked at other options that have been carried forward by Berger ABAM later on. If you look a little closer, there's an existing road that can be used by emergency vehicles a short distance from the top of the bridge. And you'll also see that there is a large platform up here, about 120 feet above the valley floor. Perfect. For people to come up, rest, and then be further evacuated up and out by emergency vehicles. I'm just showing you the evacuation route that would be related to the treatment plant. This would allow the Ording High School and elementary school to be able to come over to the levee and then come over to the bridge site. The earlier indications from some Ording officials was that a bridge or a tunnel would be suitable across 162. Later on, they decided that the bridge was the preferred option. But in any case, it didn't affect our analysis. But the good point was that the pedestrian traffic would be allowed to be away from vehicles. They would be moving at their own pace and would be able to evacuate this way. So, with the locations in mind, what kind of size would you be using for the bridges and for the pathways? Now, this was an interesting problem because you have a focus of a consulting engineer was to look at the schools and say, how are you going to evacuate the schools? But it became obvious that you can't just tell the Ording citizens, I'm sorry, this is only for school only. You have to be able to go with the rest of the people. So, as part of our modeling analysis, we had to assume that multiple populations of delayed evacuees would have to use the bridge and pathway cooperatively. With that in mind, we did our modeling. We ran 14 different models to figure out how the sizes of these bridges would have to be. And as it turns out, the bridge sizing was suitable for both during school hours as well as after school hours. So, for instance, the density of population is greater after school hours. People are at home and so forth in the middle of the night, and the size of the facility that we came up with is suitable for them. So, we were able to meet the criteria of the report. We actually produced a report that looks like a phone book, and the modeling analysis is another phone book, so we were paid based on the pound, basically. And we came up with something that was presented to the emergency management people as well as the Bridge for Kids Committee, and they felt that it was worthwhile. We do have modeling for this these people being able to come, and they can get to the right elevation within 40 minutes. But this also provides hope for the schools as well as for the citizens of Ording that they can self-evacuate by foot and not have to rely upon the emergency services, as well as taking pressure off the existing roads for those that can't evacuate by foot.
just the overview of the project. Coming down 161, there's really three components of the project, and we started with the sewage treatment plant option that Chris laid out for you. So over 162, there's the overpass, there's a trail connecting it to the back of the treatment plant where the levee is, and then the bridge going up the hill. And you can see it here from another point of view. So I'll take you through the project, the three components, starting with the overpass at 162. We looked at the overpass, we studied the different options with the Planning Commission. You'll see the ramps on each side, the ramps for the people from an ADA point of view, and there also are stairs on each end for the rapid use that would be handled during an evacuation event. Another point of view, you notice that it ties in very well with the trail. And we've looked at the eventuality of expanding the width of 162 as well. This is a view from the development, the housing development near the corner of the bridge. In our model, we kind of put you in a position of crossing over the bridge. The width of the bridge and the width of the stairs leading up to it actually were determined by Chris's study using the flow of pedestrians, the volume that would have to pass over this bridge over the course of the 10, 20, 30 minutes of evacuation time. So the bridge facilities would be wider than you would normally see for a pedestrian bridge, say for a trail. It's designed to take the demand of all the people coming across the bridge in a limited number of minutes to escape. Then at night, we could have lights on these bridges, and we also talked about having lights on the entire trail, not only the bridges, but also the trail leading up to it. So at night, things would be lit in case of a nighttime evacuation. Now taking a look at the Carbon River crossing, this is kind of a view from up above. You can see the Carbon River. On the right or upper right is what we call the Carbon River Bridge Safe Haven up on the plateau that Chris alluded to. And then you can see in the middle of the picture here the treatment plant. Just a couple views of the bridge. You'll notice this is not your typical bridge, and it is a suspension bridge, but one that you've probably never seen before. So I'll take you through a few of those engineering ideas. A view from up above, looking down. There's a couple of characteristics of this bridge that developed not only with our design team, but also with the input from the committee. And we determined that the best overall design was to clear span not only the river, but also the critical slope going up to the plateau. So it is a span of roughly 300 feet, 150 over the river, another 150 going up the side slope. We investigated the slope, and even though it's stable, from this point of view, it'd be very difficult to put in some deep foundations to support the bridge. We looked at putting a foundation in the river or a column, but there are hydraulic issues in the river, and we don't want to raise the level of the river. So we went all the way from the bottom, just on the west side of the levee, all the way up to the safe haven on the plateau.